Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Viking Chats. And I am delighted to be joined today by none other than Mr. Toby Martin.
Well, as if, Kristjan, I could teach you anything when it comes to prop tech, but I'm going to do my best. Thank you for having me.
So, for those of you who are not aware who this fine young man is, Toby and I met during his time at Reside Bath. So Toby knows a thing or two about lettings and operations. And then Toby has recently made the adventurous step into the murky world of consultants and is now out there to help you with all of your business needs, whether that's understanding and adopting AI, figuring out your video content, looking at your lettings ops, whatever it is. If you want a delightful smiley face to tell you all the shit you should be doing, get in touch with Toby.
I love that sales pitch. Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. The murky world of consultancy. We were just saying there's something about the word consultancy that sends a shiver down my spine, but I guess I have to embrace it because that's kind of where I am now.
It's who you are. I'm going to buy you a cape.
You cut me, I bleed consultancy.
Come in, letting agents and reveal yourself.
Yeah, but you're right. I have lived a life of agency as well. I have all of those hallmarks of a life in agency: colossal bags under my eyes, PTSD, flashbacks, and now
glamour.
Now I help other businesses try to avoid that.
Bizarre. So look, dude, one of the reasons I really wanted to get you on, apart from the fact that you're a bloody lovely chap that knows lots of things, is really wanted to have a bit more of a chat with you about AI.
Yeah.
Right. So not a new subject for anyone in there. A bit like prop tech 10 years ago, agents are probably already hating the tag AI. And wondering what all the fuss is about. But that's one of the reasons we need to have a chat, is, look, I keep on having the same kind of soundbite put out there, but I genuinely, passionately believe that this is our generation's industrial revolution. I think the transformation that we're going to see over the next 3 to 5 years, and obviously beyond that, but in the next 3 to 5 years, is going to be of a scale that I don't think we've seen in the last 60, 70, 80 years or more.
Yeah.
And I think it genuinely is that shift of, horse-drawn plows to machinery. We're going from an array of work done by humans being automated and managed, almost certainly to the same standard, if not higher, by machines. And so, yeah, I'm really passionate about agents engaging in this conversation. I think AI is overwhelming because there is so much. There are so many things. And I think at the best of times, agents are presented with so many tech solutions. There's something stupid. I don't know how many. There's over like 400 prop tech solutions that get offered to agents.
There's more prop tech than there are consultants.
Wow, I mean, it would make a very good battle scene. Something in the business. So yeah, that's throwing me off a little bit. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, no, you're right. We're at a dawn of a new age, aren't we?
And look, I think the opportunities are almost unlimited, and because of that, I think for many it's overwhelming, and for many they don't really know where to start.
Yeah.
And I think there's kind of two sides to this conversation at the moment. I think there's AI leveraging, which I don't think agents need to think about too much, because you've got suppliers like us and lots out there who are figuring out within our individual platforms how we're going to plug in and leverage the capabilities of AI for agents to use it. So there is an element of AI that agents can take apathy about because their suppliers are going to worry about it. And so we're currently in the middle of building our first AI tool within the depository, which is why I wanted to get you and Mal on. I'd say our two kind of leading industry AI experts have a bit of a chat about this as we kind of build up to launching that. And I'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing in that space a bit later, because you also are very familiar with our platform. So I think there's that side of AI that agents don't need to concern themselves about. You know, what I would say is, I think the only thing on that side agents really need to concern themselves is talk to your suppliers and help them understand where you think AI would be best leveraged in the product.
Yeah.
You know, so we all know the products and services out there that do really well are the ones that really listen to their client base and listen to feedback and build the features and the functionality that their agents want and need. The important part of that dynamic is it's really important that you as an agent have that relationship with your supplier and that you are telling them. You won't get it tomorrow, you won't get it next week, but you'll hopefully get it soon.
Yeah. It's interesting starting to see AI creep into prop tech. There's been some early adopters on the CRMs and obviously other. Yeah, I'm fascinated to see what the depository has in store, because it's clear to see with products like that how AI will benefit it, but actually seeing it implemented is just going to be, I can only imagine, an enormous time saver for agencies. And obviously that's where we want to end up. We want to end up where, in a place, and we will eventually, where AI is seamlessly integrated within the platforms that we use day to day at the moment. And we will get there, but at the moment it's not across the board.
No.
And it's fantastic to see early adopters such as you starting to bring it into the platform. But at the moment, as you were saying, there's two sides to it, and the other side to it is the AI, which if you want to make the most of it, you have to go out and proactively use on their own platforms, on ChatGPT or on Gemini or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you're right. We're still in the starting blocks. We're at the dawn of this new industrial revolution, this new age, and it is. Things are moving at a bonkers pace. But my, I guess, concern is that if for those users who don't start to embrace it, start to learn it now, if you're already feeling overwhelmed, then that feeling is only going to snowball over the coming years as AI becomes more omnipresent, more integrated in our lives. So when I talk to agents, I'm still fascinated and bewildered when I come across people who are still quite alien to AI and do find it overwhelming, because obviously having kind of gone there myself and played with it and learned it, and don't get me wrong, I'm not from a tech background, I'm from an agency background, but I've tried to learn how to use it, tried to learn the possibilities, the capabilities, what you can do with it. And so I consider myself to be an advanced basic user of AI, but even to that extent, you can get a huge amount from it. And so I do really think that if you are going to be someone who is included in this revolution, then you've got to start getting on board now and learning the basics now, because otherwise you are going to feel that overwhelmed, and there's that risk of being left behind as things evolve, I think.
Well, like you said, I think it's about taking those little bites, right?
Yeah.
Taking those little bites at the process. And I think for most agents, they'd be best off taking an approach similar to how I think agents should take an approach to prop tech, which is you look at your business, you look at where things aren't great, and what that means could mean anything, you know, whether not great means the size of that part of the business, the profitability, turnover, whatever. That could be your performance, that could be your fee earning, that could be operations, how efficient you are, that could be the job satisfaction of your team within that role. You know, you can look at what is classed as an issue or a problem to solve, can be a multitude of things, but you as a leader will lean in a certain direction, whatever your kind of style of leadership is. But I think much like I would say to an agent, hey, if you're overwhelmed by prop tech, sit down, look at your business and figure out, right, tenant onboarding is a mess. You know, we want to streamline it. Great. Go out and look at the 3-4 suppliers in that space and figure out which is the right one for you, and commit, on board, refine, and yeah, move on. And much like that, I think, like you said, you look at the operational side of business, but outside, like I said, away from industry specific products and looking at the generation side. So for example, within Base, our letting agency, so we leverage the tools in a handful of ways at the moment. So ChatGPT, obviously a lot of that around ideas, around marketing.
Yep.
You know, that's great for a lot of agents who are overwhelmed. You know, you can say, right, here is my website, here are my social medias, this is what I want to achieve in the next 3 months. Help me understand how I achieve that. What sort of content plan should I have, etc., etc. And you can keep fleshing it out, blah blah blah. We leverage it immensely in terms of how we take a single piece of content and turn that into a multitude of assets. So, you know, this podcast is a perfect example, right? So, from this hour or so chat that we will have, I don't mind sharing how we then kind of disperse this across many channels. So, you know, we're recording this and Google is transcribing it straight off the bat. Gemini, their AI engine, is also taking notes. So there'll be interesting, actionable suggestions that will come out the back of that.
So you've already got 3 resources out of a single recording. You've got the video, the transcript, and a summary.
Yeah. So we'll publish the video. So we publish the podcast as a full format video. We then drop the video into Opus Cut AI, which you'll be familiar with, platform that just really easily disseminates a long format video and breaks it into 10, 15, 20 sort of short form videos, puts subtitles on it and everything else.
Gives each clip a score out of 100 to tell you how successful it's going to be on social media. I love that.
Yeah. And you can tweak and refine that. And, you know, of the 15, 20, we'll probably use 5, 6, 7. You know, we'll pick and choose those ones, and you can tweak where it edits and blah, blah, blah. So sorry, we've already got a long format video. We chop that into a short format video. We strip out the audio file, and that becomes our podcast. We use a really cool platform called Buzzsprout, which if people haven't heard of, go and check it out. If you want to start a podcast or if you're running one, super easy. It's got lots of cool tools to help you upload your stuff, publish it to every podcast, you know, platform out there. And it also helps you track listeners and all that sort of stuff. We then take the transcription, and I will put that into ChatGPT. And for ChatGPT, I will actually generate 2 blogs out of that. So I will give it a prompt around what we want to achieve for the depository with that content. And then I will go in and give it another prompt for a blog and what we want to achieve with that content for Base.
Yeah.
And so out of that, you know, we've got video, podcast, short format videos, 2 blogs, and then ChatGPT, if anyone's using it recently, when you create a blog, it will then prompt you to say, oh, would you like me to generate a LinkedIn post for you? Would you like me to generate a short format version of this to post on your Google business page? You know, would you like, can we generate a graphic to go with it? You know, so with an hour's chat, and I would say maximum half an hour's effort across all of those channels, we've generated that array of content.
Absolutely. And that repurposing is one of the primary uses of ChatGPT that I think applies really well to the world of agency, especially. One of the things that I've recently run a webinar on it, but the building block, as most agents perceive it, of their sort of marketing output is a blog. Most agents have a blog set on their website. Sometimes it's a bit stale and musty and not updated frequently enough. But usually an agent puts out a blog and they consider it job done. But I was trying to point out that with your blog, okay, well, let's start off with the blog itself. Yeah. So first of all, you don't have to sit down and write 500 words off the top of your head. Obviously, you can get ChatGPT to help you generate that blog. Or let's say you open up Property Industry Eye or The Guardian or whatever publication and you read a headline. You could easily get ChatGPT to repurpose something that already exists into a blog dedicated to your company. And and I want to get on maybe a little bit later about how you can make sure that the output is tailored to your company, so it's not just generic.
I'm going to come around to that, because that's a really important part of our conversation today, is about honing your AI voice. It's got to feel authentic, right? If we
Absolutely,
GPT and we all generate articles that fundamentally sound exactly the same.
Let's stick a pin in that. On the repurposing front, if you've got that blog to start off with, it's not job done, because then you can get ChatGPT to repurpose that as a video script. You can then get it, if it's got local relevance, to repurpose it as a press release. And obviously then to repurpose it as social media content, Instagram, carousel, LinkedIn post, whatever it may be. So you can then get it to repurpose it as a mail out, an email to go out to your clients saying, I thought this might be relevant to you. So again, in the same spirit as to getting multiple bits of content out of this podcast, agencies often begin with a blog. And just from that one blog, you can suddenly get multiple different pieces of content within minutes if you know what you're doing on ChatGPT.
And that's the thing. I think for most agents, and let's not forget, most agents are smaller operations. You know, running a website is relatively cheap or free, depending on what website setup you've got. Obviously, social media, producing the content is free, but the time and energy is what you put into those things. And we've all known lots of agencies that put lots of time and effort in, but like you said, it's a bit scattergun, it's a bit all over the shop, and it ends up actually being a huge investment for very, very little return. What things like ChatGPT give you, like you said, is that ability to just very quickly leverage an idea, an article, whatever. You know, I think something great for letting agents is taking your case studies that, you know, we just got this tenant out for rent arrears, we just repossessed this property, we've actually just refurbished this property for a landlord, and we now get 25% more rent. But I think where agents would struggle to sit down and figure out how they extrapolate that, the great thing with these engines now is you jump in and go, right, you know, this is what we've done and this is how we want to leverage it. And again, you know, I think the thing I've learned with all this stuff is more is more. Give them, you know, write a long prompt. Give them a lot of information. Don't just say, oh, we removed a tenant for a landlord today. Put that in a blog.
Yeah, absolutely. The more basic the prompt, the more basic the output. And actually on that, there was recently one of the OpenAI itself came out and published what they considered to be sort of the optimum structure for a prompt. And it's lengthy, and you can actually, I sometimes think when I'm writing my own prompts, I can imagine someone else's voice saying, oh, this is taking just as long as actually if I'd done it myself. That's not the point. ChatGPT is a great time saver. And especially when you get onto automating things and saving these prompts and reusing them in future, it does save time. But the ultimate goal should be to use it to generate superior content that actually is better than you could do yourself. So it's worth investing that time in writing a proper prompt. And that structure, for the record, because I've got it here, start off with assign it a role and set it an objective, then give it its instructions, specify what format you want the output to be in. Do you want it in bullet points? Do you want it to be in a blog? Do you want it to be a press release? If you've got examples, if you've seen something and you think that's great, don't try and describe it, just upload the examples, whether it's a screenshot, whether it's copy and pasting text. Then give it context, as much context as possible about your business, about who you are, about who your customers are. And then I've added this one. This wasn't actually on OpenAI's, but I think it's really important. Ask it to ask you questions. So at the end of your prompt, say, before you perform the task, ask me any questions that will help you to perform this to the best of your capabilities. And get it to interview you, and it will give you a set of questions that just help to drill down on exactly what it is you do, what you want to achieve. And you get something that's a lot more tailored and customized rather than generic output.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I would say my average prompt now is probably like 3 to 5 lines of text.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and sometimes longer. So I've started using quite a cool tool for LinkedIn called Co-author. And so that's really interesting. So people might remember Christmas or just before Christmas, there was those kind of equivalent to your Spotify year.
Yeah.
It was for LinkedIn. And
I remember, yeah.
You know, so that was a really clever marketing campaign for the company behind Co-author. They did that as a PR piece as they were building out that AI engine. And you can now sign up to have Co-author, which is exclusively an AI tool for LinkedIn. And it's super cool. We've got it, you know, you sign up to it. It actually spends quite a lot of time understanding you at the start. So you put in what you do, what your background is. Obviously, it's got your LinkedIn things. It asks you if there's any other sites it should look at. What are your objectives that you want to achieve? And then it will also, it works through that, and then it comes up and says like, oh, we think these are your 5 primary objectives and these are your 5 secondary objectives. And then it's literally a drag and drop list. So you can reorder them in each category, you can drag them across, but you can say, look, 1 to 10, here is the order of priority of what I want to create with that content. You tell it how often you want to post, which I think typically the choices are like weekdays or 7 days a week, and I've opted for 7 days a week just to kind of try and get full value from it. And then you tell it when you want an email. So I've said at 10 o'clock every morning, I want that email to land in my inbox, and say 10 o'clock every morning I get an email from Co-author that goes, here are 3 articles we think you could do today. And it basically has already looked at what's out in the news, what's new coverage, and, you know, global, local, everything. And it will have 3 things. And typically, you know, one will be something to do with lettings, like renters' rights bill, AML. One will be something techie, prop techie. And then the third one, who knows, you know, and you pick and choose the one you go in for, and it will have an outline of the article. And then, and then you give your 10 pence worth. And sometimes it's a really nice start, and I will add 2 or 3 lines. What I did yesterday, I think I wrote like 10, 15 lines of extra content, etc. But very, very well refined, really good tone of voice. Really,
and it's interesting that it's not presenting you with the finished article. It's asking for your input to make sure that it includes your tone, your views, and that's the difference. I think that's the difference between someone who is doing that, whether it's on that platform or doing it through ChatGPT or any others, versus someone who's literally just prompt, copy, paste onto my social media, and that produces that kind of output, which primarily, so we're getting much better at identifying spotting social media output, and we're a mixed bunch. You know, I think it's about 50-50. There was some research on this, but a lot of people do look unkindly on AI generated output in terms of trustworthiness, in terms of actually giving it the time of day. So about 50% of people are less engaged with output that they consider to be AI generated. And if you're using a very basic prompt structure and not personalizing it at all, it is a lot easier to spot the AI output. And so you want to be able to personalize it and input your own perceptions and views into it as much as possible. Yeah,
for sure. So we talk about a few things. So that's in base. That's how we leverage doing one piece of content, and turn that into, what did we talk about, 5 or 6 sets of assets, which we can then disperse across all of our different channels. And like you think, you know, and then also it's not just, importantly with all content, it's not just about post and forget. You know, you want to circle back to that stuff. You want to, you know, here's our favorite bits from the week, here's our favorite bits from the month, and so
I want to come back to that idea of retaining your own voice, though, because I think that is so crucial to me. And I think that's one of the risks when I speak to people about AI and how they're using it. And you know, we spoke at the start about the level of engagement that people are having with AI, and a lot of people are still using it in quite a basic way, perhaps because they don't have that level of knowledge or understanding of it. So a lot of people are still using it in a basic way. There's a quote that I come back to time and time again, and whether if I'm doing some training or something, whether it's about video or AI or whatever, it always applies because it's so relevant to the world of a state agency. And it's from Seth Godin, who's a master marketer, and the quote is, "In a crowded marketplace, fitting in is a failure. Blending in is the same as being anonymous." And I think it's something that we're really guilty of, especially in a state agency. You compare, if you go on to, if you pick 10 estate agents at random and you go onto their websites or you go onto their social media pages, the likelihood is they'll all have very similar appearances, very similar output, very similar text, very similar services, and very frequently they won't promote their own team members in terms of, they might have an about us page, but in terms of like the hero image on the website, it'll just be generic, people shaking hands, tenants with a key, whatever. And so we do run the risk of blending into each other in a state agency.
Yeah,
and the risk
is the greatest danger for agents.
Yeah, I think AI exacerbates that risk, because if we're coming to AI and all using it in the same way, then again, we're going to be sharing very similar output, which is going to worsen that kind of image identity crisis that we've got in a state agency, where we're all putting a lot of time and money into proactively trying to look the same. Yes. And so from my angle on this is that when it comes to AI, you've got to do everything you can to try and essentially be more human than ever.
Yeah, and I think that's the bizarre dichotomy with AI, right? Is it can help you be more human if you use it right.
That's right, yeah. And it presents an opportunity, because again, the more people who are using generic output, then as a consumer, we're going to become increasingly tired of generic AI output, and we're going to crave human interactions and human, recognizably human content more than ever. So it presents a great opportunity. So the question is, how do we use AI in a way that retains our personality, who we are, the things that actually make connections with consumers. And for me, that is embracing things like there's a feature in, you got to pay $20 a month. It's the paid for ChatGPT, but there's a feature called Projects, which is fantastic. It's essentially a way of creating your own bespoke GPTs. They're not public, only you can have access to them. And the difference is within projects. So for example, I'll give you an example. I've got a project which I set up as the purpose of it is to convert news articles into estate agency blogs. So a news article on the Guardian website, turn it into a blog for my fictional agency. And first of all, the project allows you to upload documents. So I tell everyone to have five documents that you should want within your agency anyway, which are your customer avatars, your company history, what awards you've won, your background, your tone of voice guide, so maybe examples of text that you like, either from you or elsewhere on the internet, your values, your customer values. And I've missed one. Your services, of course, your services, how you actually earn money, help chat. So you then upload all of those documents, and then that project, everything that it outputs, everything it generates will be with those 5 documents in mind, and it will be tailored to that. So that's one half to it. And then the second half of the project is you can type custom instructions, so that every time you use that project, it follows those instructions. So my instructions within this particular news article to blog project is, I'm going to give you a link to a news article. You're going to use that to write a blog for my estate agency. And you're going to include commentary and analysis from me, the managing director of Toby Martin Estate Agency, that gives insight and that gives local relevance to my local market. And then all you've got to do, you've got that saved within ChatGPT, and every time you come back to it, all you've got to do is put in a single URL to the Guardian
article.
It writes the article. It
Yeah.
does it with your tone of voice, your customer avatars in mind, your company history. It follows those instructions. It includes quotes from me. It makes it much, much different, and in my eyes, far more superior to just your generic, if you've just gone write a blog about this.
Sure.
And so, yeah, whatever I now have a bank of these projects. All of them are trained to follow my tone of voice, my customer avatars, all of it. And it covers every single aspect of your business if you want it to. I even have business advisors in there. I've got one where I've said, I want you to act as Daniel Priestley. And when I come to you with a question, I want you to advise me in the knowledge of Daniel Priestley's business strategies and advice.
So I imagine at the moment is he tells you to move abroad and stop paying tax. Did I say that out loud?
It's in the business plan.
No,
so, yeah,
my
message is do everything you can to use the tools available to you to personalize these platforms.
I think the really interesting thing is, I think for a lot of estate agents, they struggle with creativity.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of agents, that's not a criticism, that's just an observation. Because
it's
a lot of people,
a luxury, isn't it? It's something we do if we have time.
And creativity can feel like a luxury.
Yeah.
And I think, agents have, the vast majority of agents have enough on their plate just running their business to invest time and energy in the fluffy element of creativity. But I think that you quoted Seth. I absolutely adore Tom Durant at DCTR.
Yeah.
I'll probably pronounce that with Tom Durant. I think it's probably more weird accents on everyone's name. But Tom and I really bonded. I adore his absolute passion for creativity. And quite, I agree with a lot of what he says is what a lot of us do as agents is insanely dull. A lot of us churn out that same, hey, you get a free appraisal, look at our market share, oh, you've seen our board, we've sold on your street. If everyone else is doing it, it's not setting you apart. And I always come back to, I talked about this actually already on an earlier podcast, but I always come back to this conversation I had probably about 10 years ago at a networking event. I sat down with an agent I'd never met before, and he was bemoaning the fact that over the last 2 years, their fees had basically halved. And his job, like so many others, is predominantly commission. And so he was doing the same amount of work and earning nearly half the amount of money. And he was bemoaning this fact and how unfair it was and blah, blah, blah. And, we very quickly got into, I was like, why do you think that is? And he was like, well, there's 3 agents in our marketplace and we pick up 95% of the listings. And it's, cool.
Yeah. What's
the difference between the 3 of you? And literally his response was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, what differentiates you? And he was like, I don't know, we all do the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, but are you better at something? Do you do something basic? Do you do professional photos and they shoot it on a mobile phone? Or do you do premium listings on the portals and they just do, I don't know, is there anything, I don't know, and literally he couldn't muster up a single clear differentiator between him and their 2 main competitors.
Yeah.
And as such, neither can the consumer, right?
Absolutely.
So when they were presented with those 3 agents propositions, which 90% of clients would talk to those 3.
Yeah.
And if you can't differentiate typically on service, delivery, everything else, how are you going to differentiate which agent you pick? Very simple. You're going to pick the one that is the cheapest, because if they all sound the same, look the same, claim to do the same stats, same results, more or less, You know, okay, oh, this one does 2% more.
Absolutely.
But there is no clear differentiator. Then there is only one way to differentiate, and that is fee. And I think that, you know, agents can bemoan what Purple Bricks did to the market, or, you know, what tech is doing, and blah, blah, blah. But we all know there are agents out there who are showing that that is absolute bollocks. You know, there are sales agents out there getting 3% on a sales fee. I wouldn't say that's common, but I know a lot of agents that get 2 to 2.5% plus VAT day in, day out.
Yeah.
You know, and then you've got agents saying that it's impossible to get past 1%. You know, I was speaking to Ian Crampton at Ferndown Estates the other day, you know, and that was great to talk to a northern region agent, where typically I find talking to letting agents around more the, you know, southern end, we tend to do quite well on fees. I often find when we talk to the northern half of the country and Wales and the such like, there's a very common conversation about going, you get how much? Now, what was really lovely talking to Ian was he was saying, you know, with this pivot with the Renters' Rights Bill and everything else, you know, they are quoting what I consider standard fees, 15% plus VAT, 18% letter managed. Yeah. He was like, we're picking up landlords every day of the week like that, you know, non-negotiable, done. But to get to that point, they have differentiated themselves from their market in multiple ways. They've picked up some awards. They've got a stellar reputation with reviews. They're plugged into the guild. They, you know, do this, that, and the other. You've got to define that tone. I think, you know, with our agency at base, we've always, being different has always kind of been very much kind of one of our objectives. Yeah. Just because there was a lot of things that we didn't necessarily like or agree with about the general kind of channels and communication that agents use and the way we talk to people. I hate industry jargon. You know, it's just so boring. It's so dull. And as an industry, great when you're at a conference and we're talking with all of our mates and our colleagues and our competitors. Of course, we all know who an applicant is and a vendor is, and conveyancing and all this sort of, you know, like, of course, technically great. You have a technical conversation, brilliant. Yeah. That's not how consumers talk about people. They don't talk about them in any kind of way that we do. If you want to engage your customers and win new customers, you've got to talk in a language that they embrace and understand and feel comfortable communicating in. Yeah. You've just got to drive that communication being different. And like you said, it's, you know, we went kind of big and bold with our website last year because I think it's been quite eye-opening as becoming a supplier, because I always looked at kind of generally what the market was doing. But again, as we touched on earlier, we've got busy days, you've got businesses to run and staff to manage and everything else. Now working in the supplier space as well, obviously we look at a lot of agents' websites. And what you realize when you start doing it en masse is how similar agents appear. There's a consumer impression that they get. If they're looking around and you've all got an almost identical templated website from the same website company, really fundamentally the only difference is the color palette and the logo.
There's a bit of a trend I've noticed speaking to business owners of saying the phrase, I don't pay attention to my competitors, I just focus on what's important for me. And I get the essence of that, but I do like to say, just look at them and just to see what are the similarities and what are the differences. Because once you compare your marketing, your self-promotion, you might be surprised how little difference there is between you and your competitors. So from that perspective, I do think it is worth looking at their services, their promotion, their promotional materials, because it's a bit of an alarm call. Because like you say, and I know that obviously Base is wonderful at this, and I love your new website. It's got video throughout it. You've got to remember that stat of okay, by the time you meet someone for a market appraisal, they could be up to 70% of the way through their decision already, because we live in this age of information. People like to feel in control of their own decisions. They're not just waiting for you to turn up your step to make a decision. They've already gone out, they've already done their own research, because they want to feel in control. They want to feel like they're making a well-reasoned decision. So by the time you meet them, they might already be 70% of the way through their decision-making process already. So have you laid a breadcrumb trail for them to follow of outstanding content and materials for them to lap up? Because that's what they're looking to do. And if you haven't, then you're missing out on a wonderful opportunity to turn up to the market appraisal already having made that impression. And if all you're giving them is materials that don't set you apart, that don't create a point of difference, then you're arriving on the same footing as all of your competitors. Whereas if you have somehow differentiated yourself, then at the market appraisal, you've already given yourself an advantage over your competition. And so many agents, unfortunately, are arriving at the market appraisal having not given themselves that head start. And it's a wonderful opportunity missed.
Yeah, and I think nothing of what we've just said is new. Like the fundamentals of marketing, of differentiation, of, you know, setting out who your ideal client is, who your market segment is, your language, your style, everything else. None of this is new. You know, it's kind of the advertising 101 for the last 50, 60 years. And I think bringing this back to AI, I think there's plenty of agency directors, bosses, marketing directors, whatever, out there who kind of know they should be doing this stuff. But up until recently, the tools and the capacity to do that have been very, very difficult to do.
Yes.
Or very time consuming, not very difficult, very time consuming. And again, bring it back to AI, what we've talked about now is, look, if you want to differentiate and you can't figure out how the fuck to differentiate, start using ChatGPT to help you, or you know, Gemini or whatever tools. I know we default to calling ChatGPT, but go and take your 5 competitors' websites and social media pages and drop them all in a fact sheet. You know, and like we said, give ChatGPT a really decent, comprehensive prompt. What do you want them to look at? What do you want them to identify? What do you want them to understand? And what actions do you want it to deliver you off the back of that? So it could be that simple of, you know, here are our 4 competitors in our local marketplace and their social media channels. You know, please look at, you know, from a consumer point of view, if you were visiting these agents, what primarily sets us apart from them? What do we do differently? What can a consumer identify as a tangible benefit of choosing to go with our agency over these other 4? You know, and again, you know, you keep refining it, right? It'll come back to an answer and you go, that's not quite what I was looking for. I'd really actually like to understand it more from this perspective, you know, and you drill down, until you've got a really concise kind of report on what that is. And then you turn around to ChatGPT and go, cool, now how do I go about implementing that? You know, what do I need to do about my website? What do I need to do about my comms? What do I need to do about my social media? You know, and I think that's where people kind of are missing the trick. I've spoken to people, and as people get used to it, as people embed it more, I think people are getting to grasp this more. But again, I remember having a conversation. Actually, it was at PropX last year. So PropX, and I was chatting to a chap in the bar after the event. Or was it the hotel the night before? Hotel the night before. And I was chatting to a gent who was very proud of the fact that he was using ChatGPT for his content. But what was fascinating was he was like, oh, yeah, well, you know, I'll go to ChatGPT, I'll give it a subject that I want to talk about, and it will give me a piece. And then I copy and paste that into a Word document, and then I make it me.
Right.
I was like, right, okay. Why? And he was like, well, you know, because that first one is, you know, as we touched at the start, that first one's fine. You know, it's great. It's gone and found a couple of other sources that back up what it says, but it's not me, it's boom. And I'm like, cool. And what's your prompt? Like, what are you asking? Yeah. Oh, well, literally, I'm just like, here's the subject. Write me an article on it. Like,
yeah.
Okay. Like, I was like, think about it like your personal writing assistant, like your ghost author. I was like, would you ask someone to write? Would you give someone a title of a book and then go, "Oh, write me a novel.
See you later.
An hour." And he looked at me and I was like, no, exactly, you wouldn't. And I was like, even if you did do that, I was like, would you look at the first draft and go, cool, thanks for doing that now. I will now wade my way through and tweak and chop. And he's like, well, no, I suppose I'd probably go back. And I'm like, yeah, and that's what you do with ChatGPT. I was like, give them more information up front, like we talked about.
Yep.
But when you get that first draft, read it and go, if you get 2 paragraphs in and it sounds like a load of waffly bollocks that you would never say, you don't need to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Get into that prompt and go, like, I'm sorry, dude, but this feels very generic.
Yeah.
This is where I would sit on it. This would be my key viewpoints, just to remind you, this is what I sound like.
Yeah, exactly. That's my comment. It's he's generating the output and then making sure it sounds like him. Switch it around. First of all, train ChatGPT to sound like you.
Yeah.
All of those previous articles, say the ones that you love, save them in a PDF, upload them every time you use ChatGPT and say, this is my tone of voice. Then you don't obviously check it through, but very unlikely you'll have to do a lot of editing after you've done that.
And again, also, I was saying to him, like, you don't need to edit it in Word. Like, go back to it and go, oh, look, I don't like the 3rd paragraph. That isn't something I would say. And paragraph 5 feels like it should really be paragraph 2. And it might be nice to chuck a bit of this in.
Yeah.
And I was like, just write that. He's like, sorry, what? I'm like, yeah. That like hour and a half you spend editing the article that it took 30 seconds to spit out for you.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe spend 5 to 10 minutes just having a conversation with ChatGPT, going, love this, flesh out that, let's drill down on this. Can you find an example of that?
Yep.
There was having the world's best assistant who never has an off day, who never gets pissed off with what you say, who doesn't get offended when you go, well, that's a bit bollocks. Because you literally...
I sometimes get a little bit pissy with ChatGPT. Yeah, do you find yourself doing that sometimes?
And then you read it back in and remember just to keep our overlords happy.
Keep it on side, yeah. But I do find myself sometimes saying, sometimes it writes something and I'll say to it, that's just rubbish.
Yeah.
It doesn't get offended. It just produces something better. I might have
got
an AI kill list.
Someone who just crafted a fucking 1,000-word blog. You just went, what is this shit? What is this? If you just copied this, if you just Googled it and just copied and pasted it onto a Word document, yuck. That's the awesome thing, and I think that's that's why when people question how far AI is going to go and how much it is going to transform the way that we work from an individual basis to entire corporations, is exactly that. It's always on call.
Yep.
It never rests. It never gets tired. It doesn't need compliments. It doesn't get offended if you don't like what it does. It never has an off day, even if you do. And I think, like as you attested to, I think, not that I would advocate like talking shitty to anything or anyone, inanimate or otherwise, but that's the great thing. If you're having a shitty, moody day, you can be like, you know what? Not in the mood today. Rubbish. I could have done that better when I was 5. Fine, write it. You won't get away with saying that to your staff, but you will get away with it to ChatGPT.
I genuinely do know people who refer to ChatGPT as their therapist. So if you're having a shitty day, then there's worse people to speak to than ChatGPT.
Look, it's random. It's not relevant to what we're generally talking about. But I love that Reddit thread that you posted about the band. Was it the God question or the band?
The God prompt.
I never followed up and did the second one But I freaking loved that response.
Yeah. So this was a prompt that was basically meant to pull apart your personality and tell you your deepest, most flaws. And everyone who I shared it with said the same thing, which was, "Oh my God, it is freaky how accurate that is."
Yeah.
And it was designed to deliver it in a kind of fairly brutal tone of voice, absolutely no BS, just like, this is what's wrong with you.
And I love the fact that each one, it went, "Would you like me to be more honest?" Because that's lightly brutal. I can be moderately brutal if you'd like. You'd be like, "Yeah, go on then."
Yeah.
And it would give you a bit more, and you go like, "So you like the moderate brutal, do you? How about I get brutal?
No, I want it tougher. Give it to me.
Striving. I want to be a sobbing mess on the floor by the end of this." I found it absolutely bloody fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah, and for me, it kind of crystallizes that, this big, it's not, but it's not a human doing, it's not the nuance. Jesus Christ, man, the amount of stuff that this can pick out is.
It is. I mean, do never underestimate. It sounds like a stupid thing to say, but do not underestimate the intelligence of artificial intelligence. Yes, it may be artificial, but the intelligence word is critical here. So the very first iteration of ChatGPT, which was built in 2022, was trained on 175 different parameters and over 500 gigabytes of text covering books, Wikipedia. That was the first version. This knows a lot of shit. This is a highly knowledgeable, intellectual, intelligent creation. And I wouldn't be as bold to say that it is more intelligent than you or I, but it certainly knows aspects of everything that you and I will not.
Ultimately, if your knowledge is gained from a series of experiences and learnings, right? Fundamentally, it is learning and absorbing everything we create.
All the time.
Now, the reality is, much like if you're taught bollocks, you'll know bollocks. There is nonsense out there that it's absorbing. So there is that blend.
Yeah.
But just like us, I mean, think of your Sunday dinner sat around with your family.
Yeah.
There's a lot of varying degrees of knowledge and information about various subjects that you cover there, right?
That's right.
People like to think they're informed. Depends where they're getting their information from. I think that. So let's just bring it back, because we need to kind of bring this to a bit of a close. We could talk forever. And I'm also cautious. I don't want to steal Mal's thunder, because I'm chatting to him tomorrow, and we're going to talk a bit about how AI is transforming search as well. And I mean,
I'll be fascinated to listen to that. Yeah, absolutely. But I think that my kind of, I think from what we've discussed today, the critical takeaways for me are to appreciate the importance of almost to appreciate the risks of using, let's say, ChatGPT, which is, don't lose your character, your personality, don't lose your creativity, and understand how actually AI can amplify those elements if you instruct it to do so. So it's understanding the opportunities in AI, but also the risks, and using AI to turn those risks on their head and actually to make them what sets you apart in your business.
Yeah, and I think that you touched on, and we touched on at the start, the overwhelmingness of it, the daunting task of all things AI. Again, leverage AI to figure out AI. I think the one thing we keep coming back to here is just go and have a chat with AI.
Yeah.
Whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini, whatever you gravitate towards.
Yeah.
Just go and start having a conversation with it. And I think that's what people don't understand, is I think they feel like they need to go and do research and figure out something quite complex and come up with like a strategy.
Earlier, I
go and get on ChatGPT and just ask it a question, as small or big as you want it to be. But again, treat it like the best assistant, researcher, confidant, companion, business partner that you've ever had. remove all of those filters that you would normally put in most of those conversations where you're considering people's emotions and reactions and thoughts and desires and everything else, and just go in there and start having a conversation and work with it. Start playing around with some stuff. I mean, like ideas and going in there and chucking it some random question. The amount of times I sit there giggling, I'm like, ooh, fascinating.
Earlier in the podcast, I set out quite an elaborate kind of 6-7 stage prompt structure, the ideal prompt structure. If that's overwhelming and intimidating, tell ChatGPT to write you the prompt and it will do it for you. You just, like you say, play with it, discover the extent of what it's capable of.
So look, I think we've waffled well there. I think might be
we could waffle more.
Actually bringing it in under an hour, which is
I never thought it was
help with AI doing it either. Take that, AI. But yeah, no, dude. Thank you for your time. For those of you who don't know enough yet about Toby, Tobes, what's your website?
My website is tobymartinconsultancy.co.uk.
There we go. Or just Google Toby, the consultant of consultants. Toby, king of consultants, and you will find him.
Or find me on LinkedIn. That's much more entertaining. We can chat.
Yeah. So check out Toby. Look at his website. Check out LinkedIn. If you want to kind of just discover any which way you can leverage Toby's knowledge, insights, personality, humor into your business. And as we talked on, whether that's understanding how you're going to leverage AI, how you're going to develop your marketing, looking at the effectiveness of your agency operations, or all of the above, or you just want a lovely chat with a rather lovely bloke, then reach out to Toby. Dude, thank you for your time. I'm
very grateful to you for having me. Thank you.
Probably soon, and look forward to catching up